if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Welcome to The Visionary Entrepreneur. My name is Dane Dunlap.
And I'm Nicholas Schimmelmacy.
This is a podcast where we interview entrepreneurs about their story and visions for the future. We're here to create a space to network and to learn from each other's experiences. Hey guys, thanks for joining us. Today we have Sven Groeneveld. Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to try to cover, Sven is a tennis coach as well as an entrepreneur. He's coached many professional tennis players. And so today the goal is we're going to be comparing being a professional tennis player with being an entrepreneur, because there's a lot of similarities. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is how to take a leap of faith, how to invest in yourself, and then as well, what are the characteristics of a successful person?
So me and Sven, I was traveling with him for a couple months on the tour while he was coaching players like Caroline Wozniacki and other top players in the world. He was working with Adidas at the time, then moved on to Maria Sharapova. I think he has one of the biggest WTA coaches on the tour over the last 20 years. And I'd really like to learn more about his experience on the tennis court and as an entrepreneur. So Sven, glad to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, it's actually been 30 years on tour now. And I started very young at just after college. So just about where you guys are, at 25 years old. And started with the number one in the world, Monica Seles, who just won the US Open. And from then, I actually was very fortunate to meet a lot of people in the industry, especially Mark McCormick of the International Management Group. He was the founder. He passed away, unfortunately, but he also wrote a very famous book, What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School, one of the books that I was reading before I met him. And obviously him being a total entrepreneur in tennis, especially in the management side, I definitely latched onto him. I finished my university in business management, so I thought it was so cool to actually meet this person. And he ended up helping me a lot, introducing me within the tennis community, the professional side to it, and ended up coaching players that are, most of them are retired by now, but in the period they were number ones, and we won some Grand Slams together between Monica Seles and Arantxa Sanchez-Vicario, Mary Pierce, Michael Stiek, Tommy Haas, Nicholas Kiever, Mary Jo Fernandez. And then, as Nicholas mentioned, I also was running the Adidas Player Development Program for some time, for about 8 years, and had many players under that system with Ana Ivanovic, Caroline Wozniacki, Andy Murray, Fernando Verdasco. And then I actually picked it up with Maria Sharapova for 4 years. Currently, I'm working with a Japanese player, and he's ranked around 110. But I'm also an ambassador to a Japanese brand, so the collaboration is perfectly for me at this moment. So just a short recap. Oh yeah, by the way, I was head of Swiss tennis for a year when Roger Federer became the number one junior in the world. So he was also part of my...
Yeah, that's just a short,
little part of the bio. That's really impressive. I see you got the Orange Coach Exchange hat on. What is that?
So Orange Coach is actually, that's a job platform, started 11 years ago to provide a service for employers and employees. So basically for the tennis coaches around the world. I got my first job because of a advertisement in a tennis magazine. And so we decided to actually make it online and function as a job platform. But we now extended that with the Orange Coach Exchange, where we give webinars and one-on-one sessions, and we call them locker room sessions, where we really have intimate sessions with coaches and parents and players just basically to exchange our expertise and building basically our footprint on the internet in regard to Orange Coach and the coaches services that we provide.
Perfect. Thank you, Sven. That's awesome. So basically, Orange Coach is like a LinkedIn for tennis coaches with other added service, I would say.
Yes, it's
So
exactly what it is.
today we really want to compare the tennis player with the entrepreneur, because both on both sides you have to take a leap of faith. You have to put money out front and invest in yourself, and literally take up money and invest in order to get somewhere. So how do you see that comparison? Like, how
I
do you?
think, well, that's the perfect comparison. At the current state where they're speaking about a relief fund and they're saying, okay, what is a professional player? And they say, yeah, who's breaking even? Maybe 100 men and 100 women are breaking even. Is that professional, or also those that are below and starting up? And I feel it's, if you're starting out as coming out of college or starting your career earlier, you're a startup. You're definitely an entrepreneur. As you said, you're taking a leap of faith. You're investing. You're borrowing money from other people against some maybe future winnings, potential earnings in the future. So there are a lot of comparisons to being an entrepreneur and a tennis player. The unfortunate side to it is that the entrepreneur knows this going into a business. A lot of the tennis players don't recognize it, or are not maybe educated enough in order to understand what it takes to be an entrepreneur. I think if the tennis player would actually apply a little bit more the knowledge of being the entrepreneur, it would definitely help in their development as a tennis player. Uh, in addition, I believe because of the ability now with social media, you actually can create a footprint for yourself and create a brand based on the ability to promote yourself much easier than it was maybe 20 years ago. So now, actually, I believe there are some platforms coming up where they're actually providing access to athletes that are starting up, and they have sponsors contributing and maybe some investors even. These apps are starting to kick in, because the generation that is now coming up is starting to embrace the digital technology much more, and I feel that it creates a lot of opportunities, even as like a representation of athletes or entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So you mentioned that a lot of tennis players don't have that entrepreneurial mindset to make them successful. What do you think is that mindset that would make someone successful in that field?
Well, I think they're just not aware of it. I think they have it. It's just not being aware of it. And it is the element of risk versus reward. And what are you willing to invest? And without knowing when the investment is going to pay back, you do need to. And this is what lacks the tennis player a lot of times. They don't have to make a business case. If they would make a plan, and a business plan for a 5-year period, and put themselves in that path as they would do as an entrepreneur when you go out and try to raise some funds and raise money. If you would create a business plan for being a tennis player, I think it would definitely help. The only thing is, a lot of times, and I notice this at the highest level, I notice this with players that have won Grand Slams, have been number one in the world. If you ask them to write down their goals, a lot of times they feel that as pressure, and they don't feel that as a way to succeed. They feel that only can let them down. It's very strange in a sense. But if you would say that as an entrepreneur, they would just send you back. Sorry, we have no interest.
You said that you need to constantly invest in yourself and constantly improve. How do you see those two parallels, like tennis player, like tennis player and entrepreneur? So from a
So,
mental point of view.
yeah, so you look at the very best in tennis. You look at the Serena Williams. You look at Steffi Graf in the past, and you look at Roger Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal. They seem to be able to repeat their winning. They win a slam after slam or a tournament after tournament. They constantly looking for improvement. They're constantly setting new goals, and they working towards a legacy, not just on, oh, I want to be the best. No, they want to have a clear legacy where they're working towards leaving that legacy. And I feel that sets them apart. And so if you would, compare that to an entrepreneur, you must have a clear vision of where you want to go and where you want to repeat and continue to invest in new ventures. Like, for example, what we did with Orange Coach. We been around for 11 years. We growing every year, step by step. We added another element, which now is you can actually, we have a software system that actually is now able to be reproduced as a white label. So now we are actually selling our technology of how to search coaches and how to match the employer with the coach. And we now are actually selling that as a white label. So we're actually going into different sports also. We have already added paddle tennis, and we've added field hockey, and we're about to add soccer. So constantly, it's like, if you see the Apple 4, where are we now? We're at 11 Pro. I mean, look at where we continuously improve on, and sometimes the players do not realize that. They are afraid to continue to invest in their own development because they're afraid to lose what they have.
Right. Yeah, you talk about constantly being able to reproduce results. Those Grand Slam winners can do it. And I think when you look at the most successful entrepreneurs, they're doing the same thing, right? You look at the founder of PayPal or the founder of any of these big companies, they go on to start another 5, right? So
Yes.
Is there a formula for that? How do you reproduce results constantly? Or when you see results, how do you, not back away from success?
Well, you be willing to fail. That's the biggest thing. Everybody is afraid of failure, and failure is not something that should put you down. It should actually motivate you to continue to grow. Don't take no for an answer. Actually, looking for no's is actually what you should be looking for. And if I would say that on a court, you need to make mistakes in order to get a weapon, and in order to improve your stroke or your serve, you need to make some errors before you start getting the results of winners. And in entrepreneurship, I believe you have to make mistakes. You have to be willing to put yourself out there and be willing. I mean, I've got a couple of other ventures that just totally didn't succeed. I mean, I failed. I lost a lot of money. I mean, that's part of life. I mean, I've been married twice. It's and I don't know if you want to say that as failure, but it's not fun. But if you don't take the leap of faith and you don't take that risk, and you're too afraid of failure, you're not meant to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I think actually for the people that aren't tennis players that might be listening, tennis does not work, and is a traditional sport where you get drafted and that's it. You know what I mean? If you look at the NFL or any of those sports, right? You make it to a certain level, you get drafted, you're good. You don't even have to look back, right? You're signed on a contract. But in tennis, like you said, you have to be constantly there, failing all the time. And even if you have that talent from a young age, right? You're failing in the beginning. And so I think that's perfectly right when you talk about, failing and getting up. I guess my question is, how do you remain patient, right? Because you talk about failing over and over again, and I'm sure there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are failing. How do you stay patient when, the odds are against you?
Most important, you surround yourself with great people. You need to get around people that are no more than you. They are far greater experts in the field that you want to get better at. You need to be able to basically give responsibility to others and give that trust. As a player, you need to surround yourself with those that you believe in, but also those that also you may not like what they have to say, but still have to follow their lead. Um, Now, obviously, that's the same counts for entrepreneurship. I mean, you will get maybe some advisors, or you may have some leadership within your company. If it doesn't work, also don't be afraid to change. You know, it's me as a coach. I've had plenty of times where I felt that I was not getting the results, or I was not able to get the trust from the player, and then I had to say, okay, this is the end. It's not working between us, and you shouldn't be afraid to make those decisions either. So it's a fine line. If it was that easy, everybody would be successful. But those that are not successful, um, as long as they learn, we always say in tennis, you never lose, you learn. And if you can apply again that skill set also to entrepreneurship, yes, you lost money, but you also learned. Well, so make sure that the lesson is always greater than the loss that you make.
Right.
Thank you, Sven. That was awesome. That was very insightful.
I do have another question. You spoke about, you know, the money, the financial loss, and I think that's pretty important too, because you know, money isn't plentiful in both sides, right? As an entrepreneur and as a tennis player in the beginning, right? Obviously, when you make it, it's great. You know, what do you do? What are your options when your bank account is showing zero, right? I mean, you talk about patience, you talk about getting back up and learning, but what about the financial side? What are your options when that reaches zero?
The most important thing, you always have to. That's why you surround yourself with good people and people that are willing to invest in you. And if that means that the player cannot pay, maybe those that support him or her, ask them to, you know, can we pay maybe in a half a year from now, or can I, you know, make a bigger percentage? Same with an entrepreneurship. I mean, you might have to go out and get another investor and offer them a bigger stake of the pie, you know, and that's what you have to look for.
People
The other
that
thing
invest
is,
in you, you know.
yeah, but the other thing is, I believe it's also that you have to start asking questions. If you with your back against the wall, ask yourself questions, but also ask questions to others. You know, it'd be amazing if people come to you and you just, you know, people really come to you and ask for help. A lot of people are afraid to ask for help, and because it's like in school, you know, if you're asking questions, a lot of times maybe you know, you considered, oh, he doesn't know what you know, he doesn't know, maybe he's not smart enough.
Mhm.
Asking questions, it's like, I've learned to ask questions much later in my life than I probably should have. You know, if I'm on a street right now or in a store, I right away just, if I don't know, I go ask right away.
Yeah, you
I
let
don't
go of
waste
your
time.
ego. Yeah.
Yeah, the ego comes, of course. But it's also, you know, um, that's part of very close to being, you know, failure, not knowing something,
Mhm.
being afraid to not knowing something. But that's when you need to ask questions. And every time I've had that, every time I've put myself aside and say, okay, I want to ask some questions, there have been so many people that want to help, and that's, you'd be surprised. That's one thing that I think people sometimes even take advantage of when they don't really need it, but they've learned that asking questions can get them ahead.
Yeah, certain characteristics. We didn't talk much about. I mean, we cover a lot of good things, but maybe you can tell us certain characteristics of like somebody who is a Grand Slam winner versus somebody who didn't make it, and like give us a couple examples of you don't have to name names, but
um, those who actually win a Grand Slam, they do give the responsibility, they take responsibility, um, they they don't take no for an answer. They're so determined and they are so driven, and that's internal. I never really had to motivate people, maybe inspire them through certain like literature, some books that they would have to read, not about what I had to say. It's more about those that really win those slams are the ones that have a clear, very clear picture of what they want to achieve. Now,
Vision.
those who don't, and then sometimes it's not that far away, but it's just that they always feel they can maybe bend the rules. They can always get away with something.
Cut corners too. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. And those who cut corners will get caught. Every time. Those that win the slams, they don't catch. They don't cut the corners. They're willing to stay out there and make the effort and really also accept the losses. I mean, you've seen plenty of great players that have been in the finals and have lost the final, devastated. But then they get back up, get back on the bike, and you go for it again. It hurts. It falls down. Falling down, it hurts. But they do just get up. They get back on the court. They just have a clear, very clear picture of what they want to achieve.
I think that's absolutely correct. And I think one thing that I notice with a lot of successful people is their self-confidence, right? I mean, any Grand Slam winner has a lot of self-confidence. Any entrepreneur that's willing to invest in themselves has a lot of self-confidence. My question is, what is the difference between self-confidence and cockiness, right? Because I think there's a difficult line there, right? Because you see a lot of that on television with those tennis players. And I think that distinction is important, especially when you're starting out your own company. How should I be self-confident? What's too much?
Well, I mean, the very best are never cocky. They know their strength and their weakness. They know both.
Mm-hmm.
I work with a player by the name of Michael Stiek, and I said, I want you to get back on court. You were such a, like cocky kind of person, and he lost it a little bit. And he goes, well, I don't want to be cocky. I just want to be confident.
Mm.
And how do you get confident? I asked him that question. He goes, well, that means I need to know that there are no weaknesses within my game, and I need to work on those weaknesses, and I want to improve my strength. And so that gave him confidence. So he was very clear on what he wanted to achieve in that sense. He also wanted to work on those weaknesses. If you admit that there is a weakness, that actually gives you confidence. Because then, say if you have your backhand is your weakness, just start hitting more forehands.
Yeah.
You have to start work on your footwork, and you start hitting more forehands over time. Your backhand actually is not that bad. And so there are ways around finding your weakness and you turning into a strength. And that is the biggest difference, know your weaknesses as well as your strength.
When you focus so hard on your weaknesses, and I feel that you can't think about your strengths. So that was one of my problems as a tennis player. Is I didn't like my backhand. I focused so hard on my backhand that I forgot about my forehand, which was that was my weapon. And I think as an entrepreneur,
backhand was off.
it was not good. It was not good. But I think as an entrepreneur, that could be important, right? Because if your strength is business development, or it's coding or something specific, but you're not good at something else, right? Instead of maybe worrying so much about your weakness, knowing it's there is, and then getting people to help you with that and then focusing on your strengths. I think that's what you're talking about, and I think in an entrepreneurial sense, that's super important.
Yeah, and that's the thing, if you have a weakness within your business or within your strategy, and you can actually outsource it, and you find ways that you actually hire the smarter people in the room. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
That's just a very famous saying. I don't know whose quote is this, but if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah. I think we wanted to kind of finish up, and I think we're going to keep this as a theme is, and this doesn't need to be, in the tennis world, it could be in any world, is kind of just getting what you think the vision of the future is going to be in our society, whether that be, technology, whether that be the economy, really any way that you see, the future of our society going, and if you think there's any opportunities going forward.
I believe that, I've listened to one of the speeches of Jack Ma of Alibaba, and he mentioned about the soft skills, the people skills, the skills of communicating, the skills of leadership within your community, speaking to others, um, able to do something that, because artificial intelligence in the next 10 years, it's going to take over. So many elements, but the interactions with people, the interactions of the sale, or the numbers are going to be incredible, but still the relationships are the most important part. I think the soft skills will be improved over the years by those that are going to be the leaders in our communities, and they will be surrounded by the best technology. Technology will never take the lead over the human, in my opinion, as long as we focus on our emotional, holistic growth of the human nature, humankind, connect with people, and through like what we're doing right now, share experiences, and because AI, they will bypass us.
Yeah, and AI can do a lot of amazing stuff with logic, right? But one thing it can't do, and I don't think it's going to be able to do for a very long time, is replicate creativity and the soft skills, right? And so that's always going to be important, especially if those math, logic, all of that gets taken over. You're left with soft skills. So I agree.
That's right.
100%.
So that's where I think it's going. I mean, it's something that I really enjoy, actually connecting with people more. Now it's tough because of the coronavirus. You cannot see many people, but still online we can connect and share. And I think that's something that we might have to do in the future as well. But the human connection is very important.
It's awesome.
It's awesome. Thank you, Sven, for your time.
All right, guys.
Thank you so much, Ben. It's
My
been
pleasure.
awesome.